My name is Callista. I'm 34, an interior designer, and the proud owner of a home I restored with my own two hands. I haven't spoken to my family in 9 years, not since they disowned me for not living the life they demanded. So when my phone rang last April and my mother's voice, syrupy, sweet, and fake as ever, poured through the speaker, I knew something was coming. But I didn't expect this. She wanted to host my brother's wedding. At my house. The house I built without them. The house they never once congratulated me on. The house they only cared about now that they needed it. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't slam the phone down. What I did was make a plan. For most of my life, I didn't realize I was invisible. Not in the literal sense. My parents saw me. They just didn't look. They saw the grades, the chores completed, the polished smile at dinner parties. But they never saw me. Trenton, on the other hand, was impossible to miss. 3 years younger, reckless, entitled, golden. He failed upward. Every small improvement, every B- on a report card, every half-hearted apology was met with praise and reward. When I came home with perfect grades, it was met with silence. "That's what we expect from you," my father said, without ever looking up from his paper. It took me years to realize how damaging that sentence really was. I learned early that effort wasn't enough, that excellence didn't earn affection, that being useful was the only acceptable form of being. So I worked harder. I turned an abandoned sunroom into a reading nook. My mother's book club adored it. She never mentioned I built it. My father complained about the paint smell. I started sketching renovations in my notebooks during class, reading interior design blogs when no one was watching. I stopped waiting for their approval and started building something that felt like mine. When college came, I chose design. They chose to undermine it. My father called it a phase. My mother suggested I do it on the side. They pushed for business school. I compromised. Double major, state university, multiple jobs. Meanwhile, Trenton coasted through a fully funded education, switching majors when bored, skipping internships, floating. He was a late bloomer. I was just difficult. But I didn't give in. I built a portfolio with real clients and real results. I graduated with offers from top firms. And when I finally launched my own business, I thought maybe they'd be proud. So I invited them to dinner. We sat at their favorite steakhouse. My mother talked about an upcoming fundraiser. My father ordered his usual. Trenton didn't speak at all. I waited until dessert. "I've opened my own firm," I said. My father set down his fork. "That's a mistake." That was his reaction. Not curiosity, not interest, just rejection. Then came the offer. A job at one of his friend's companies, managing commercial properties. He'd already told the guy I'd accept. I told him no, and that's when it happened. He said if I wouldn't take the job, I was on my own. No support, no name, no family. My mother said nothing. Trenton looked away. I placed my keys to their house on the table and left. That night, I cried in Zoe's apartment. Not because they cut me off, but because somewhere deep down, I still thought I mattered to them. By sunrise, that illusion was gone. I didn't just lose my family that night. I lost the version of myself who still needed them. When I walked away from my family at 25, I walked straight into the unknown. I had no safety net, no investors, no favors. Just a rented 300-square-foot office, a dented laptop, and 3 clients willing to take a chance on me. The first year was brutal. 2 of those clients dropped out within a month. Mysterious last-minute cancellations that smelled suspiciously like my father's influence. I never confirmed it, but I didn't need to. His version of discipline was always clean, private, deniable. So I worked with what I had. I redesigned a friend's coffee shop for free just to prove what I could do. I bartered design services for printer ink. I slept on the floor of my office for 3 months to save on rent. But I didn't stop. Every penny I made went back into the business. I wore the same blazer to every pitch meeting and made it look intentional. When I didn't have access, I created my own lane. Slowly, the tide turned. A restaurant owner I'd helped went viral after a food blogger featured his space. And with it, my design. New leads followed. A client's wealthy aunt hired me to restore her historic condo, and she became the kind of person who talks about you at charity galas. In 2 years, I went from sleeping on a futon to signing a lease on a full studio space with exposed brick and 14-foot ceilings. My firm had a name now: Callista Design and Restoration. My waiting list stretched into next quarter. That was when I started dreaming about a home, not just any house, but a space that would reflect everything I'd built from scratch. At 30, I found it. An abandoned 1780s colonial buried under ivy on 3 acres in Connecticut. Most people saw rot, rodents, and years of disrepair. I saw potential. I emptied my savings and bought it outright. The renovation wasn't glamorous. I showered at the gym, lived in 2 rooms while working on the others, learned plumbing from YouTube and troubleshooting from trial and error. When things broke, I fixed them. When something was too far gone, I rebuilt it better. I didn't hire influencers. I documented the process on my firm's blog, showing every raw, unvarnished inch of it. People responded to the honesty and to the vision. By the 3rd year, my home was more than livable. It was a masterpiece. The kitchen had modern functionality wrapped in colonial warmth. I turned the barn into a workspace, my ceilings exposed, the beams original. I designed every detail, down to the stone path from the garden to the fire pit. That house was more than shelter. It was proof that I could build beauty out of abandonment. That legacy doesn't come from lineage. It's carved from choice. In that same time, something else took root. A family I didn't inherit, but created. Zoe, my anchor, had moved nearby with her wife and 2 kids. Marcos and David, the couple who owned the best restaurant in town, invited me to every holiday dinner and treated me like blood. Kelly, a brilliant landscape architect, helped me turn the yard into a dream and ended up becoming one of my closest friends. These people never asked me to prove my worth. They just showed up, again and again, quietly, consistently, without keeping score. They remembered my birthday. They celebrated my magazine features. They helped me haul lumber when a delivery guy bailed. One night, we were sitting around the fire pit, wine glasses in hand, and Zoe looked at me and said, "I hope you know this is home now. We're your people." And I did know, not because she said it, but because every part of me finally felt seen. It started with a number I hadn't seen in almost a decade, but one I recognized instantly. The screen lit up with my mother's name. My hand hovered, not out of emotion, but calculation. I hadn't heard her voice since the night they disowned me. And now, after 9 years of silence, she was calling me at 2:12 on a Tuesday afternoon. I answered with the same voice I used with clients who tried to talk down my rates. "Hello? Callista, darling," she sang out, as if we'd spoken last week. "It's Mom." Of course it was. And I already knew this wasn't a reconciliation. That much was clear from her tone, too cheerful, too rehearsed. "How have you been?" she asked breezily. "I'm well," I said evenly. "This is unexpected." "Well, families should stay connected, shouldn't they?" She laughed. "Anyway, we have some exciting news. Your brother Trenton is getting married." I waited. "And," she continued, "there's been a bit of a hiccup with the venue. The country club suffered a small fire in their event hall. Just smoke damage, nothing serious. But they had to cancel all events for the summer." "Of course." "And then," she added, almost triumphant, "I remembered that beautiful article in Architectural Digest about your home. Such a creative space, really. Those gardens. That barn. Callista, your house would be perfect for the wedding." There it was. Not a hello, not an apology, not a hint of remorse for nearly a decade of absence. Just a request. "You want to host Trenton's wedding at my home?" I clarified. "Just a small celebration. 200 people, maybe less," she said. "Ceremony in the garden, cocktails on the patio, dinner in a tent on the lawn. Caroline's mother absolutely adores your aesthetic." I didn't respond. She pressed. "It would be a lovely chance to let bygones be bygones. Water under the bridge, don't you think?" No, I didn't. "I'll need time to think about it," I said flatly. "Well, do think quickly," she chirped. "Invitations should have gone out already. Your father will call tomorrow to discuss logistics." The line went dead, I stared at the screen. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the audacity was breathtaking. True to her word, the next day, my father called. He didn't bother with small talk. Your mother tells me you're considering hosting the wedding. I haven't agreed to anything. Well, we need to begin preparations immediately. We'll have our event planner contact you. I didn't flinch. This is a significant imposition, I said. And given our history is irrelevant, he snapped. This is about family. Trenton needs this. The Westfields are important connections. There it was again. Trenton's needs. My boundaries, irrelevant. My home is also my business, I said calmly. I'm not comfortable with 200 strangers occupying it, especially after 9 years of silence. He didn't even try to pretend. This isn't about your comfort, Callista. It's about doing what's right for the family. I expected more maturity from you. The call ended with him demanding an answer within 24 hours. Then Trenton called. Hey, sis, he said, like we hadn't skipped a decade. Long time. Yeah, I said, 9 years. Life gets busy, he mumbled. Anyway, Caroline is really stressed. She saw your house in the magazine and literally cried. Said it's her dream venue. And honestly, it would mean a lot to have my only sister involved. I almost bought it. Until he added, Caroline's parents will cover all costs. Even pay you a site fee, though, family discount and all. I said nothing. He went on, talking about logistics, where the catering trucks would park, how guests could use my master suite to get dressed, as if this was a done deal, as if I was just the concierge. Trent, I said, this is not just a venue, it's my home. He chuckled. Come on, they're not strangers. These are family friends. Mom's club, dad's associates, people who matter. And I didn't. By the end of that day, I had 7 more calls. 2 from my mother, 1 from the planner I'd never agreed to, a voicemail from Carolyn, who I had never met, and 3 from family members who hadn't so much as sent a Christmas card in years. Aunt Susan told me, family comes together in times like these. My cousin Michael texted, don't punish Trenton for Dad's mistakes. Then I saw the post, a professionally edited photo of my house, taken from my website, captioned, Can't wait to celebrate our big day at this dream venue, 63 days until forever begins. #Trick and Caroline, #Mitchell wedding. They had already announced it, used my address, without permission. I received a text from my cousin Jennifer, always the family gossip. FYI, they already sent out the invitations last week with your address. Thought you'd say yes once RSVPs started rolling in. That same afternoon, I got a visit from Caroline's mother at the local coffee shop. She greeted me like a daughter-in-law. When I said I hadn't agreed to host anything, her smile barely cracked. I'm sure you and Trenton will sort it out. Family always comes through. I went home and found an anonymous complaint had been filed against my business, alleging code violations. The inspector found nothing. But I got the message, loud and clear, say yes or we'll make you pay. That night, I opened my laptop and started drafting. Not a contract, a line in the sand. I sent the email just after 11 p.m. It was addressed to my parents, Trenton, Caroline, and the wedding planner, because apparently one had already been hired. It was concise, formal, and unmistakably final. After careful consideration, I must decline the request to host Trenton and Caroline's wedding at my home. While I wish them well in their marriage, my property is not available as a venue. Please inform all guests and vendors immediately. Continued use of my address or likeness constitutes unauthorized use and trespassing. Zoe reviewed it for me. She tightened the tone, professional, but immovable. The response was almost instant. My father called within the hour. His voice was tight, controlled in a way I recognized, his version of fury wrapped in civility. This is absolutely unacceptable, he said. After everything we've done for you. You disowned me, I said. 9 years ago, do you remember? He deflected like he always had. Your brother needs this. The Westfields are important. Then find another venue, I said flatly. You're being ungrateful and difficult, he snapped. This is family. You told me not to use the family name, to lose your number, to disappear. That was then. This is about now. No, this is about convenience. It always was. He hung up. The text messages started not long after. From my mother. How could you humiliate us like this? Your brother is devastated. I didn't raise you to be this cruel. From Trenton. You're ruining the most important day of my life. What if we cut the guest list to 100? We'll keep people out of the house. Please, Callista, don't do this. And then from Carolyn, a shaky, tear-soaked voice message. She said she had always hoped to build a relationship with me, that she admired me, that she didn't understand why I was doing this. I deleted it. By evening, the outer circle was activated. Aunt Patricia called to explain how I was tearing the family apart. Uncle James warned this stress could affect my father's heart. Cousins who hadn't acknowledged my existence in years suddenly wanted to mediate. Then came the retaliation. 2 formal complaints were filed anonymously with my town. One for supposed historic code violations, one for improper commercial use of my property. Both were baseless, but disruptive, time-consuming, strategic. Then came the digital front. Newly created accounts began leaving 1-star reviews on my firm's business listings. Forums I participated in saw sudden comments questioning my professionalism. One of my clients called to say someone was asking questions, veiled inquiries about my licensing, my billing practices. I wasn't rattled, I was resolved. Then I saw the post. A watercolor rendering of my home, featured on the wedding invitations, captioned, "Can't wait to celebrate our big day at this dream venue." My address, my house. Without my consent, I contacted my attorney. We issued cease and desist letters to everyone involved, my family, the Westfields, the planner. We also filed legal notice with the local police and vendors. Everything was documented. Then I called a private security company, former military, discreet, efficient. We built a full protection plan. 4 guards stationed at each entry point, motion-triggered surveillance, legal notices posted at the perimeter, incident logs for every attempt to enter. Meanwhile, I booked a 4-day retreat in Nantucket. Prepaid, non-refundable, location private. I changed the locks, updated my security codes, had my mail held, asked neighbors to report anything suspicious. Then came the smoking gun. An email forwarded by mistake from Caroline's mother. It was intended for the wedding planner. The subject line read, "If Callista resists." It laid out strategies, bringing in a locksmith, distracting me with a brunch invitation, even a list of family friends willing to lie and say I'd agreed to host. They weren't hoping I'd say yes. They were preparing to take it. The morning of June 24th, I sat on the balcony of my resort suite, coffee in hand, wrapped in ocean air and silence. At 9:37 a.m., my phone buzzed, motion detected. I opened the camera app and watched, live, as the first van rolled up. Elite catering. 2 SUVs followed. Then my parents' car, Trenton's Tesla, Caroline's mother's white Range Rover. My guards were already in place. They never even opened the gate. I watched my father arguing, red-faced and gesturing wildly. Caroline crying. Trenton pacing in circles. The wedding planner holding a clipboard, visibly flustered. Guests showing up in full dress. Vendors confused and irritated. At 10:45, the police arrived. We had briefed them days in advance. The officers reviewed the paperwork on file, spoke calmly to my family, then stepped aside. No event, no access. By mid-afternoon, reality began to set in. People started leaving. Vendors packed up. The planner stood alone at her car for almost 10 minutes, talking into her phone with her other hand shaking. At 5:30, the last vehicle pulled away. One of my guards texted, "All clear, your father said. This isn't over." We documented everything. I closed the app and set down my phone. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt still. And in that stillness, something settled in me, like concrete poured and hardened at last. This wasn't about revenge. It was about sovereignty. 3 days after the wedding that never happened, I returned home. The house was exactly as I'd left it. Clean, silent, mine. A quiet, elegant refusal carved in wood and stone. The garden was untouched, the barn locked, the camera logs full of attempts and denial. Waiting in my mailbox were 3 envelopes. One from my mother, written in clipped cursive. "You've destroyed your brother's happiness out of spite. You're cold. You're toxic. This family is better off without you." One from Trenton. "I don't understand what happened to us. We used to be close. Did you hate me all along?" And one from Caroline. "I'm sorry. I should have reached out directly. Everyone kept saying you'd come around eventually. I didn't know. I didn't see." I read them once and never again. They went into a drawer I no longer open. Weeks passed. No lawsuits, no apologies. Just a void, thick with stories I wasn't part of. I didn't respond. I didn't correct the rumors. I let silence do what words never could, draw a final line. Then came fall, and with it, Thanksgiving. That year, I hosted 20 people at my house. Zoe and her family, Kelly and her new girlfriend, Marcos and David and their extended circle, 2 clients who had become friends, my neighbors, my people. We sat under warm lighting, passing wine and stories across the table, set in the garden they once tried to claim. There was laughter, soft music, the clinking of real silverware, and for the first time, I felt it. Not performance, not duty, but connection. No manipulation, no pretense, just presence. I looked around and realized something simple but profound. They didn't love me because of what I built. They loved me while I built it. Family isn't who shares your name. It's who shows up, and I had found mine. Nobody wants a single mom with baggage. That's what my sister said, right there, at her own wedding, into the microphone, smiling. "Hi, I'm Calista Vane, 34 years old, single mom, and an accountant in a small town called Charleston, South Carolina. My son Eli is 10, smart, gentle, fiercely kind, everything I ever wanted to raise in a world that's often too cruel. I've learned to keep my head down, to survive quiet rooms and cold shoulders, especially from my own family. But that day, standing in a ballroom full of polished people, hearing my sister laugh as she mocked my life in front of everyone, I finally hit the limit. What she didn't know, though, was that the man she was about to marry already knew the real me, long before he ever met her, and he had his own story to tell. I've always liked numbers. They don't lie, don't judge. People, on the other hand, a different story. That's why my tiny accounting office above a bookstore in Charleston felt like home. Just me, my calculator, and Eli's doodles taped on the filing cabinet. "Mom, you almost done?" Eli poked his head in, cheeks pink from soccer. He was 10, all elbows and energy, with a smile that made hard days easier. 5 minutes, I said, typing one last line. "Homework?" "Spelling's done, but I need help with the American Revolution." I laughed. "Of course you do." On the walk home, the air smelled like sea salt and blooming azaleas. Charleston was beautiful in spring, but I barely noticed anymore. My head was full of numbers and family obligations, especially the latest one, dinner at my mother's house with my sister Serena and her fiancé. My mother, Darlene, didn't ask if we could come. She commanded it. She always had a way of making us feel like guests in our own lives. Serena was the golden girl, with her glossy hair and perfect life. And now, she was marrying Julian Renner, a financial advisor with a Harvard degree and a face fit for a billboard. When Eli and I arrived, Darlene opened the door with her usual tight smile. "You're late." "We're on time," I replied. Inside, everything was perfectly curated: lavender candles, lamb roast, and carefully chilled wine. Serena was perched on the couch like a queen. She barely looked at Eli. Then Julian stood and offered his hand. "Nice to meet you." His eyes, hazel, warm, met mine, and something flickered. Familiarity. He crouched slightly. "What grade are you in?" "5th, Eli said. "Best year. My volcano exploded at the science fair. You'll love it." Eli laughed. No one in that house ever made him feel seen. But Julian did. Serena's voice cut through. "You're not wearing that to the wedding, right?" I glanced at my blouse and slacks. "It's just dinner." Darlene added, "We didn't ask you to be a bridesmaid, dear. With your situation." That word, situation, like my life was a stain on their perfection. I stayed quiet, nails pressing into my palm. Julian noticed, his jaw tight. Dinner was long, filled with wedding talk and backhanded comments. But Eli held my hand under the table. He always knew when I needed grounding. Later, as I organized RSVP cards in Darlene's study, Julian walked in with 2 coffees. "You're basically running this whole wedding," he said. "Someone has to." He studied me. "Did you ever volunteer at Memorial Children's Hospital?" I froze. "Yes, a long time ago. My sister Lauren was there. You read to her, sang to her. She said you made the hospital feel safe." My breath caught. "She called me Sunshine Girl." He nodded slowly. "That was you." Just like that, the air changed. He wasn't just Serena's fiancé anymore. He was the boy who once watched his sister fade away and remembered the girl who made her smile. After that night in my mother's study, something shifted. Julian started showing up in small ways. A thank you text after I fixed the florist's order. A quick call to double-check the reception layout. He always made it seem casual, businesslike. But I wasn't stupid. I saw the way he lingered when we spoke. The soft edge in his voice when he asked about Eli. And most of all, I saw how Serena didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care. Julian was just another accessory to her, presentable, educated, lucrative. 2 weeks before the wedding, the pressure hit a fever pitch. The dress fittings, seating charts, guest list corrections, all dumped onto me without a single please or thank you. My evenings disappeared into color-coded spreadsheets and napkin sample deliveries. And when I wasn't solving Serena's wedding meltdowns, I was helping Eli build his science project volcano. We worked at the kitchen table together, his hands covered in glue and baking soda. "You're doing too much, Mom," he said one night. I paused. "What makes you say that?" He shrugged. "You're always tired. You haven't smiled for real in a while." I smiled then, not because he was wrong, but because he saw me. My 10-year-old saw what no one else in my family cared to notice. The next day, Julian called. "Can we meet?" he asked. "Somewhere quiet. I promise it's not about place cards." We met at a coffee shop near the marina, where the scent of salt and espresso mingled in the air. He looked tired but resolute. "I need to ask you something," he said after we sat. "And I know it's going to be complicated." "Go ahead," I said, wrapping my hands around the mug. "I want you to be my maid of honor." I blinked. "That's not how it works. Serena didn't even ask me to be a bridesmaid." "I know," he said quickly. "She wouldn't. But I told her I want this. You've done everything already, and this... it feels right." I stared at him. "Julian, you're marrying my sister." He leaned in. "I thought I knew her. I thought I knew what I needed. Someone polished. Someone loud enough to drown out the grief. But then I saw you again, and it reminded me of what mattered." I shook my head, heart racing. "This isn't about me." "Yes, it is," he said softly. "Lauren loved you, and I see why." I didn't say yes, I couldn't, but I didn't say no either. That night, my phone rang. My mother's name flashed on screen. "What were you thinking?" She hissed before I could even speak. "Serena is distraught. You had to make this about you, didn't you?" "I didn't ask for anything," I replied, voice even. "Julian did. You always play the victim. Just don't ruin her day." "I won't, but if she doesn't want me there, she can say so." There was a long pause. "You can't back out now. Julian's told everyone. Don't make a scene." I hung up without another word. Eli was on the couch, building a Lego space station. "Was that Grandma?" he asked without looking up. "Yeah." "She mean again?" I hesitated. "Let's just say, not very nice." He nodded. "Then don't listen. You always tell me to ignore people who are wrong." I chuckled despite myself. "Guess I better start taking my own advice." In the days leading up to the wedding, Serena avoided me completely. No texts, no calls, no passive-aggressive emails, which was almost eerie. I thought about pulling out a dozen times, but then I'd remember the look on Julian's face, or the way Lauren used to smile when Eli handed her a drawing. There were moments when I caught Julian watching me, like he was trying to solve a puzzle he already knew the answer to. There was no flirting, no touching, no inappropriate glances. Just awareness, like we were both waiting for something neither of us had the nerve to name. And beneath all of it, there was Eli. At his next soccer game, Julian showed up unexpectedly, standing on the sidelines next to me. "Didn't know you were into youth sports," I said. "I'm into seeing kids who matter being supported," he said simply. Eli scored a goal that day. He ran straight to us, beaming, and Julian knelt to give him a high five like it was the most natural thing in the world. That night, as I tucked Eli into bed, he whispered, "Is Julian going to be around more?" "Maybe," I said. "Why?" "I like him," he murmured. "He doesn't talk to me like I'm invisible." I kissed his forehead. "Me too, buddy." And just like that, something started to shift, not just in Julian or in me, but in the world around us. The day of the wedding was clear and warm, the kind of spring day Charleston was famous for: soft breeze, golden light, and the scent of jasmine in the air. Eli and I arrived early. He wore a navy suit and held my hand tightly, eyes wide with both excitement and unease. I wore a soft sky blue dress, simple, elegant, unassuming. I wasn't there to shine. I just wanted to survive. "You look awesome, Mom," Eli whispered. His words meant more than any compliment I could ever get from my family. Inside St. Andrew's Church, everything looked perfect. White roses, crystal chandeliers, every detail manicured to Serena's vision. Bridesmaids flitted around the dressing room, adjusting straps and sipping champagne. Serena stood at the center of it all in her custom gown, sparkling from head to toe, her expression sharp and unreadable. She barely looked at me. "Try not to trip when we walk down the aisle." "Good to see you too," I said, keeping my tone even. Darlene sat in the corner, already critiquing the photographer's angles. When she caught sight of me, she murmured, "That dress. Very you." I didn't flinch. I'd been called plain my entire life. It didn't sting anymore. The ceremony passed in a blur. I walked behind Serena, held her bouquet, adjusted her veil. I performed every duty with quiet grace, not for her, but for myself, for Eli, who sat in the front pew beside Julian's father, legs swinging nervously, face shining with pride every time our eyes met, for Julian, who caught my gaze from the altar and gave me the smallest nod, steady, warm. But nothing prepared me for what came next. The reception was held in a grand ballroom at the Charleston Opera House. High ceilings, soft candlelight, and champagne towers glittered under crystal lighting. It was extravagant and cold, like most things my family valued. Dinner had just been served when Serena took the microphone. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," she said sweetly, "especially my amazing bridal party, and of course my maid of honor, Callista." There was polite applause. I nodded graciously. Then her voice shifted, just a hair, but I recognized that edge. "And I really admire her," she continued, the smile tightening. "For raising a child alone, that takes courage, especially when no one's ever really loved you." The room stilled. A few people chuckled uncomfortably. "She's still on the market, folks," Serena added, laughing. "Anyone looking for secondhand goods with a bonus kid?" Laughter cut through the ballroom. Darlene laughed too, loudly. My stomach twisted. Eli's small hand found mine under the table. He was trembling. I stood up. I had to get him out of there. Out of that room. Out of that cruelty. Then a chair scraped loudly behind me. Julian stood. The room fell silent again. He walked to Serena and gently took the microphone from her hand. "I need to say something," he said, voice firm and low. Serena laughed awkwardly. "Julian, what are you—" He held up a hand. She froze. "This was supposed to be my wedding," he said, "but tonight reminded me that no amount of money, flowers, or polished veneers can hide the truth." Gasps spread across the room. He turned and looked at me. "Callista and I didn't just meet last month. We met years ago at Memorial Children's Hospital. My sister Lauren was dying. Callista was the one who sat with her, read to her, made her laugh. She was our light during the darkest time." I froze. Eli squeezed my hand harder. His eyes were wide. "She brought her son, too." Julian continued. Little Eli, he drew stars and planets for Lauren. She kept everyone by her bed. She called him her little astronaut. The ballroom was dead silent. Julian turned back to the crowd. So when I heard what was said here tonight, about Callista, about Eli, I knew I couldn't go through with this. Serena's jaw dropped. You don't mean that. Julian looked at her without blinking. I absolutely do. I'm calling off the wedding. Gasps again. A glass shattered somewhere in the back. Darlene stood up, pale as a ghost. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, Julian said. Send me the bill. Then he walked to Eli, got down on one knee. Thank you, he said, for being the light you are. Eli blinked, unsure, but nodded. Julian stood and turned to me. Come with me? I didn't move right away. Everything felt frozen, like my entire life had been leading to this one impossible moment. But then I took his hand. And together we walked out, past Serena's tears, past my mother's glare, past every person who ever made me feel less. We didn't stop until we were outside, under the Charleston stars. Julian hailed a cab. I know a place, he said, quiet, by the water. The restaurant he took us to was a little seafood shack overlooking the harbor. Wooden deck, fairy lights, the sound of waves crashing nearby. For the first time all day, I could breathe. We didn't say much during the meal. Eli colored on a napkin. Julian stared out at the water. Finally, he spoke. I'm sorry. For what? I asked. For the speech, the mess, everything. You don't apologize for telling the truth, I said. He nodded. After Lauren died, I lost myself. Serena was noise. I thought that's what I needed. But it wasn't, I said. No, he whispered. It wasn't. His phone buzzed on the table. Serena's name lit up the screen. He silenced it. She's going to keep calling, I said quietly. She'll hear from my lawyer, he said. Eli looked up then. Julian? Yeah, buddy? Remember those drawings, the stars I made for the lady in the hospital? Julian smiled. That was my sister. She loved them. She said I was funny, Eli said. You were her hero, Julian replied. The waves rolled in, and for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like peace. The next morning, we visited Lauren's grave. The cemetery was quiet, tucked between tall pines and overlooking the bay. Julian walked slowly, white daisies in one hand and a small stone in the other, painted with a yellow sun and stars, edges worn with time. Eli walked beside him, hands in his coat pockets. This was hers? He asked, eyeing the stone. Julian nodded. She kept it by her bed. We reached the marker, simple, clean, engraved with beloved. Julian knelt and placed the flowers, then gently set the stone beside them. She always said your drawings made her feel brave. Eli stared. I didn't think she'd remember me. She never forgot you. I stood behind them, heart heavy but soft. It didn't feel like grief. It felt like closure. Julian stood and reached for my hand. I let him take it. A year later, my life had changed in ways I never thought possible. I opened a small financial office downtown, Vane Financial Services. The name had been Julian's idea. You built this, he said. Let them know it. The space was warm, honest, not fancy, but real. On the wall behind my desk hung Eli's latest drawing, a rocket ship blasting through a field of stars. Business was steady, word spread. People came not just for advice, but for someone who listened. At home, Eli thrived. He was stronger now, more sure of himself. He'd become the kind of kid who stood up for others, not just himself. And Julian? He never missed a single game, or dinner, or bedtime story. We weren't married, not yet. But we were a family. As for Serena and my mother, Darlene, they faded into the background. Serena's career never recovered from the wedding scandal. People talked, jobs stopped calling. She moved away quietly, without a word. My mother tried to reach out. Voicemails, awkward apology cards, but I didn't answer. I had nothing cruel to say. I just had nothing left for them. Some endings don't need revenge, just silence. It was Christmas Eve when Julian brought out the box. Eli was asleep on the couch, the glow of tree lights dancing on his face. Julian and I sat by the fire, cocoa in hand. "This belonged to Lauren," he said, opening the lid. Inside sat a vintage emerald ring. "She told me to give it to someone who reminded me what love means. That's you." Tears rose before I could speak. "Callista," he said, "will you marry me?" I looked at the ring, at the boy asleep under the tree, at the man who saw me before I saw myself. "Yes," I whispered. Outside, snow began to fall, light, gentle, like peace finally finding a place to land. There's something funny about healing. You don't notice it at first. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or fireworks. It's quieter than that, like a door you'd forgotten was ever locked suddenly swinging open. For years, I thought survival was the best I could hope for. I thought if I kept my head down, stayed useful, stayed silent, maybe I'd earn some scrap of grace. I thought love had to be earned through self-sacrifice, but I was wrong. Love, the kind that heals, the kind that lasts, is never about proving you're worthy. It's about being seen, exactly as you are, and still being chosen. When Serena mocked me at her wedding, I could have let it define me. I could have walked away, once again absorbing the cruelty my family had handed me for years. But I didn't, because that moment, public, humiliating, and awful, became something else. A mirror, a line in the sand. And on the other side of that line stood Julian, choosing not perfection, but truth. And standing beside us was Eli, my son, my anchor, my reason. I don't know what the future holds. I don't expect life to be easy just because I finally stepped into the light. But I do know this. I have a home now, not just the roof over our heads, but the space where we laugh, fight fair, and let each other be human. I have work that matters. A son who shines. A man who never asked me to shrink myself. Serena once called me second-hand. But second-hand means lived in, proven, resilient, and I'll take that any day over being shiny and hollow. To anyone listening, if you've ever been told you weren't enough, weren't wanted, weren't worthy, I'm here to say that was never the truth. You were always more than they saw. You were always worth choosing. I see you, and I hope one day you see yourself too.